Hi everybody, it's Az here from Heel vs Babyface with my 700th video on my YouTube channel today, and I'd like to present it to you by starting a brand new segment called Memoirs of a Warlock. And what I hope at least to accomplish during this segment is to talk about areas and events within the world of Warcraft, potentially in past times as opposed to current times, that had a profound effect on me and how I viewed the game, and I mean that for good or for bad. And today I'd like to start off by presenting Jintha'Alor, this jewel in the crown of the Troll Empire. And at least one thing that was good that Cataclysm brought was the fact that you could fly to this place and see it in all its absolute glory. First of all, it's one I personally think anyway of the nicest looking areas within the world of Warcraft, whether or not you have an affinity to trolls or not. But on top of that, when I first experienced this place, it was in Burning Crusade, and we are talking about an era that has long gone. We're talking about an area where you couldn't actually get onto a riding mount until you were level 40, and even then it was a slow 60% speed. You had to wait till you got to level 60 before you could boost that to 100%. On top of that, there was absolutely no flying whatsoever when I did this, especially on Azeroth. Yes, there was, of course, on Outland, but not here on Azeroth. So when you had to tackle Jintha'Alor, you had to tackle it from the ground. And to me, this wasn't just a bastion of the Troll Empire. To me, this area was almost a mini game within the world of Warcraft, and something I don't think Blizzard have ever been able to recreate within the current environment. And I don't mean that disrespectfully, I just mean because of the fact that you had so many limitations. Could you see a Jintha'Alor type of place being added to Warlords of Draenor or to a future expansion? I would absolutely adore it if they did. Now, one of the reasons why I found this place so alluring was how difficult it was, and yet it seemed to be a war of attrition, and a war of attrition that I was really keen to get involved with. The troll mobs were tough, and you had to be careful not to pull too many, because remember, we're talking about an era where you couldn't rustle up 8 or 9 different mobs together and just AoE them. No. You did that, squish. You were dead. You had to take them on 1, 2 at a time, maybe 3 if you were lucky, but that was your absolute limit. And when I first encountered this place, I was greener than somebody that had been vomiting for a year. I really didn't know my class. I really didn't know the game. I was relatively new to MMORPGs. Sure, I'd played MMOs before. I'd played Rainbow Six 3. I'd played Phantasy Star Online. I'd played Monster Hunter, things like that. But these were games that involved lobbies and queuing and going in with small compact groups to different areas. The World of Warcraft was my first expansive MMORPG where you could roam anywhere, do anything, and see multiple people on your travels. And that was the big alluring feature which finally made me cave in and try it. So when I got to Jintha'Alor, I started to climb the first stairway, and when I climbed the first stairway, I fought hand and fist to get through to the next one. And it was only then, when I climbed the second staircase going through to the next level, that I realised how much difficulty and how much danger I was in. Because every time you seem to clear a bottom level and progress up, you realised that you were trapping yourself. Because of course the trolls were going to spawn below you, and you had the trolls above you. There was only one decision to make. Do I go back and leave this place, or do I carry on and try and get through to the top? And for me, the only answer to that question was to carry on and go through to the top. So the further I progressed in, the more claustrophobic I felt, the more exposed, the more vulnerable I felt. And having quests here as well just made it that little bit more scary. I had these quests that I really needed to complete. I wanted to do these quests. I needed my experience. I wanted to level up. There wasn't any heirlooms or anything like that as well. There was no help whatsoever in your leveling up process. These were tough mobs. These mobs could drop loot which I could potentially use. I could potentially equip. And those days were exciting because every single mob that you killed within the World of Warcraft and they dropped a piece of loot, you had the decision to make. If you could equip it, do you equip it? Nowadays, these decisions seem to be irrelevant. But on top of that, it became a matter of me versus the mountain. Why do we climb a mountain? Well, because it's there. That's the answer that's given to that question. And this is how it felt with Jintha'Alor. It was there and it needed to be conquered by me. I needed to make my way through this gauntlet. And this in itself became like a platform game. The whole element, it sort of felt almost Donkey Kong-esque. And I was trying to make my way to the top, to the big gorilla. But there was another reason why I needed to get to the very pinnacle of this area. And that was all the way over in Kalimdor in Tanaris. Because if you wanted to get the mallet to summon the Hydra in Zul'Farrak, then you had to have it forged here in Jintha'Alor. And that was something that I really wanted to make sure happened. I wanted to have that mallet. I wanted to be able to summon the Hydra boss because that was a special boss then. If you didn't have the mallet, you couldn't summon it. And I think those elements from the game that are no longer here, there are no longer any dungeons that have secret bosses, that we need to fill some sort of criteria in which to summon it. And I think they're great little elements of the game. Now, yes, we do have an element in WoW now where we're all entitled. Everyone seems entitled. Well, I should be able to fight every boss. Well, no. No, sure, if you put the time and effort in, absolutely. You have full rights to get to every single solitary bit of content that's available to you. But I liked that effort. I was one of those people that really liked attunements to get into raids. I liked all of that stuff because it just showed how committed you were to get through. But on top of all of this, Jintha'Alor was more. Because not only were we talking about an era of the World of Warcraft where stuff was so exponentially more difficult, but you couldn't just kill a mob, walk on, kill a mob, walk on, kill a mob, walk on. Things like mana had an effect back in these days, and you yourself as a character took damage. We're not talking about an era of heirlooms and boosted weapons and guild perks and all of this. You had none of that. None of that whatsoever. You got smacked. Chances are you got smacked pretty hard. There were so many areas that after you engaged in combat, you had to take a rest. You had to take a sit down and eat your food. Your mana was burnt out. It's not regenning how it does now. It regens so much slower. So you had to take a knee, eat some food, get some mana, maybe get yourself a little buff on top of that as well. But those were the days. So it wasn't a quick up and over and up and over and up and over. No, 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 no. This was a war. This was a battle. Jintha'Alor was the hammer. Were you the anvil? Who was the hammer and who was the anvil? That's what you needed to decide with this place. And that's where I felt that this place really came into its own, because it was testing you. It was testing every single element about you. It was testing your endurance. It was testing your resilience. It was testing your patience. It was testing your mettle. It was testing your combat skill. It was testing everything. It was such a perfect, unbelievable place. It was hard. It was grueling. It's the kind of content that a lot of people nowadays would simply cry over. And that in itself makes me sad, because I think it's content like this which set the World of Warcraft apart from other games and gave it its brilliant definition of the respect that we have for the name World of Warcraft. It comes about through this sort of content which came in within Vanilla, which came in Burning Crusade, and partially in Wrath of the Lich King, before we had so many significant changes to the game that dubbed it down. And yet there was still more. I had quests apart from the mallet to do here. I had more stories to finish here. There was a tale to be told around almost every corner. You went to another tier, you completed part of your quest. You started to get towards the top, and more stories begun to be told. I can't remember how long I spent trying to get from the bottom of Jintha'Alor through to the top. But all I can say is there were certain moments where I just had to stop. I just had to stop, walk over to the edge, look around me, and just see how much further I had to go. How high had I traversed? How much above me remained? This place just seemed to go on forever and ever and ever, and I didn't care. I didn't care a single solitary bit. It just made this place all the more alluring to me. It just made me more determined to get to the top, because there was absolutely no way that I was turning around and going down. No siree. It was always 1 foot forward. Regardless of whether or not I'd run out of mana, whether or not I'd run out of food, it wasn't an issue. It was all a matter of, I will stay here until this is done. Now, this place has undergone a few changes over the course of the year, especially with the arrival of Cataclysm. But I got to say, it's still a place now that I return to, and I get a butterfly in my stomach. I almost liken this to a first date with a girl or a guy, depending on your orientation, and you meet them and your mouth gets a little bit dry and your hands just start to get a little bit cold or clamor up a wee bit. You do get those butterflies in your stomach, maybe that little shiver at the top of your spine. Now this is the place that does it. So even though it has undergone those changes, it doesn't matter, because the memory of it, of what it used to be, lives on in my mind. I know how it used to be. I know how I first experienced this place. It doesn't matter that the mobs now can be crushed. That's totally irrelevant. Just seeing the architecture laid out and seeing it in virtually how it used to be, give or take a few tweaks here or there, you can still have those same memories. The ooze may be gone, but do you remember the ooze section? Oh, I used to absolutely love that element. Wait a minute, I've climbed all the way to the top, I've beaten all these trolls, and now there are oozes after me? Oh my god! It was just one of those great little moments. And as long as you keep those moments in your heart, it doesn't matter if the content changes a wee bit here or there, because you can just reminisce. You can come back to those places that you've been to before and just say, well, I got a smile on my face, and I've got a smile on my face because I remember when this happened back in there. And that to me in itself kind of takes over any ill feeling or anything like that that you might get because of the dubbing down of certain elements of content. Times have got to change, we have to accept that. But as long as you retain in your mind the special feelings and thoughts that you once had, then that's cool. Because nobody can ever nerf them. Not one bit. They're always going to stay with you. And just to prove what kind of special memory this was to me, if I open up my bank nearly 7 years later, I still have the hammer. I still have the mallet. I refuse to get rid of it. Sure, Blizzard have changed it now to a mace, which I can't equip. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant to me, because it's just the memory of what it stood for. And that is why Jintha'Alor is just such a special place in the World of Warcraft for a little soul like myself. So I hope you've enjoyed the first Memoirs of a Warlock. Please do like, comment and subscribe to my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook and also twitch.tv/Heal vs Babyface for live streaming. And I shall be back with some more stuff very soon. You take care, everybody. Bye-bye.